Are you familiar with the term confirmation bias? It basically means we all search for and cling to things that we think to be true. If I believe that all politicians are crooks and I read a story about a senator who took a bribe to vote a certain way, that confirms my bias. Well, more than a dozen years ago now, my son Joel, who was a teenager at the time, purchased a pack of baits that I'd seen promoted vigorously on social media by a young man named Chad Champagne. Ever the good and dutiful father, I lectured Joel about falling for slick marketing. There was nothing special about these baits, known as matrix shads, I assured Joel. They were just on his radar due to crafty promotion. On our first fishing trip after that day, Joel, of course, brought those matrix shads, and he threaded one on to start the morning. I used a different brand of soft plastic paddletail that happened to be my favorite at the time. And you can probably guess what happened next. Joel absolutely waxed me. I caught a few fish, of course, but nowhere near at the rate that Joel was catching them. I had way too much pride to swipe a matrix shad from his pack and thread it on my jig head. So I basically finished the day contributing a whole lot less fish to the day's haul than Joel did. I kid you not, the same scenario played out the next 2 or 3 trips until I finally swallowed my pride and acknowledged that, hey, maybe there is something different about these baits. I capitulated, threaded on a matrix shad, and I haven't looked back since. I now know that the tail action of the bait is unique, and the matrix shad just produces more fish than any other soft plastic paddle tail. But maybe that's just my bias talking. Maybe every fish I catch on a matrix shad just confirms that bias. And maybe there's some other baits out there that are just as good. To find out today, I'm gonna get some of the most popular soft plastic paddle tails in a pool and see how they compare to the matrix shad. This should definitely be eye-opening. All right, I'm here at the backyard pool belonging to some good friends of mine, Dan and Jill McNeil. Really nice pool back here. But let me show you what baits I'm going to be testing today. All right, first off, we got the Down South Lures Burner Shad. Then we got the Z-Man Minnows. Got the DOA Cow Series Shad. Got the Mirror Marsh Minnow Jr. We got the Voodoo Quiver Shad, Saltwater Assassin Sea Shad, H&H Kakaho, and of course the control group, the Matrix Shad. Now I'm going to show how these look jigged. That's the way I fish them most. Also with a straight retrieve, and then I'm going to put them under a cork so you can see how they look fished that way. That's how a lot of people here in South Louisiana at least fish these baits. All right, let's get them in the pool and find out. All right, just a little bit of technical information. I'll be throwing everything today on an Okuma X Series. This is a 7-foot medium power rod. I've also got a Okuma X Series reel. 30-pound braid mainline, 17-pound mono leader, 1/4 ounce death grip jig head. And to check these baits under corks, I'll be using a 16th ounce death grip jig head. I'm a big believer in using as light of a jig head as you possibly can. I want these baits kind of barely falling through the water column. That most mimics a shrimp, and no doubt in my mind, fish think they're hitting a shrimp, even though it's a paddle tail bait under a cork. And I've got that under a Versamax Pro Max. This is the cork that allows you to change your leader length. You don't have to cut and retie. Love these things. And the first bait we're going to look at is the Down South Lures Burner Shad. I've never ever fished this bait, so I'm curious to see how it looks in the water. All right, first off, if you're like me, you could watch baits in a pool all day. I absolutely love this, and there's no doubt that picking the right bait will put more fish in the boat. I'm running all the jigged and steady retrieve baits in slow-mo because that's the only way you can get a sense of their action. When the baits are under the cork, that's in real time, so you can get an idea of the fall rate. Okay, regarding the Down South Lures Burner Shad, these are popular in Louisiana and Texas, and I can definitely see why. This bait has surprisingly good tail action, both on the jig and the fall, and on the straight retrieve. It looks much better than some of the others we'll see. With the light jig head, the tail action under the cork was almost non-existent. But that was true of most of the baits. The fall rate, though, was quite good. All right, next up we got the Z-Man Minnows. You know, every Z-Man bait ends in a Z. This is the Minnows, M-I-N-N-O-W-Z. Let's see how it looks in the pool. Okay, the Z-Man Minnows is made out of a different type of plastic that makes it more buoyant. You can see that when the lure hits bottom and stands up. It also has really good tail action on both the jig and the fall. and on the straight retrieve. The tail action of the bait under the cork was better than most. And the buoyancy of the plastic helped with the fall rate. All right, now we got the DOA Cal Series shad, also another bait I've never fished. Let's see how it looks. All right, this bait was a big disappointment. It has some tail action on the jig, but very little on the fall. And on the straight retrieve, it looks like a stick moving through the water. And under a cork, the fall rate isn't great. To me, this is the worst of the baits we looked at. All right, now we got the Miralure Marsh Minnow Jr. I have fished some Miralure soft plastics, mostly the Little John, but we're gonna see how this looks in the pool. All right, this bait really surprised me. It's made out of a tougher plastic, so I expected the action to be non-existent. But it's actually one of the best looking baits. Check out that tail action. But under a cork, the fall rate is a little fast for my liking. All right, next up is the Voodoo Quiver Shad. This one's actually sold in a pack with a jig head. I don't have it on that jig head. I got it on my 1/4 ounce death grip because that's all I'd ever use. But let's see how it looks in the pool. Like the Z-Man minnows, this bait is made out of a softer, stretchier plastic that definitely helps with its tail action. It looks really good jigged. On the straight retrieve, however, the tail movement is more subtle than some of the other baits. Under a cork, the bait displays a really good fall rate. All right, next up we got the Saltwater Assassin Sea Shad. I can tell you before I discovered Matrix Shad, or before Joel discovered Matrix Shad, this was my favorite soft plastic. Now, a real big negative to these is that they tear apart so easily. you catch 2 or 3 trout on it, it's done. You got to switch it out. But my assumption has always been that it looks really good in the water. Let's find out if that's true. As I expected, this bait looks really good when jigged. The news isn't all good, however. On a straight retrieve, the tail often locks up. And under a cork, the bait has just an average fall rate. All right, next up we got the H&H Cockahoe, very popular bait here in South Louisiana. I know these things are very durable. Let's see how they look in the water. All right, the H&H Cockahoe left a lot to be desired. The tail action was good on the jig, but not on the fall. And on a straight retrieve, it was almost non-existent. Under a cork, though, the fall rate was excellent. All right, and last but obviously not least, the matrix shad. Let's see how this one looks in the pool. Obviously, I'm optimistic, but you never know. Okay, it should be blatantly obvious to anyone with eyes why this bait is the best fish producer of the bunch. The tail action of the matrix shad is just entirely in a different league. That's true when it's jigged. And on a straight retrieve. I mean, I want to jump in the pool and bite this thing. And under a cork, the fall rate is perfect. All right, if you've seen previous pool tests I've done, you know that I normally rank and rate the different baits that I test. I didn't do that this time because really, what's the point? It's kind of like having a discussion about Super Bowl winning quarterbacks that includes Tom Brady. I mean, it's clear who's the GOAT. the matrix shad is the GOAT. I just don't think it's at all deniable. But what do you think about the other baits? Did you see anything that I might have missed? Did anything really stand out to you? Which one did you think looked the best among the others? Let me know in the comments section. I'd love to hear from you. And let me know any other pool tests you'd like to see. I absolutely love to do them. All right, well, hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. Also, subscribe to the Marshman Masson channel on YouTube. And until the next time, if we don't see you in the marsh, or of course poolside, we'll see you right here on Marshman Masson.